Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. In this video we will start designing a quiz for our website. So this is the main screen of the quiz, and we can see we have this question over here and we have three options, and when we hover over these we have this animation, and we also have this animation for the next button, and we'll be adding a couple of questions and options for this quiz, and we will add all the functionality using JavaScript. But first of all we will design this using HTML and CSS. So let's get started. First of all, I just want to mention that in this quiz we are not connecting the questions and the options and all the data to a database. We are writing everything inside our JavaScript code. So it's not a good idea to use this for a quiz competition or anything like that. But this is just a simple quiz which will be on a page of a website, and you will have some questions for the visitor, and it will make your web page a little bit more interactive. So we are not going to use any database for this. Now I also have a video on creating a quiz for your Blogger website where we are using a third-party service. So if you want to create a serious quiz, you can use that. I'll leave the link of the video in the description. But for this quiz, all the data is in the front end. So if the visitor wants, they can get the question and the answers from the source code of your web page. Right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and start designing this quiz. So first of all, let's create an HTML file. So here I have opened this blank project inside VS Code. Let's create a new file over here, and we'll name it index.html. And let's create one more file called style.css. And we'll have one more file for the JavaScript. We'll name it main.js. Let's start with the index.html file. And in VS Code, you can just type exclamation and press tab, and you'll get this basic HTML5 code. And let's link our style.css file. So I'll just type link and press tab. And in the href, I'll just type style.css. And we'll also link our JavaScript file over here. So I'll just type script :src, and I'll just type main.js over here. Now I'll create a division to contain everything. So we'll create a division with the class of quiz container, and in that we'll have an h2, and we'll give it a class of question, and this is our question. I'll just copy this and paste it over here. Right, now let's create a container division for all the options. So we'll just create a division with the class of options container, and in that we'll create buttons for all the options. So we'll create buttons with the class of option, and in the first option we have Java, and I'll just duplicate this 2 more times, and the next one is Google Chrome, and then we have Python. And now we need to have a next button, so we'll create one more button, and we'll give it a class of next btn, and we'll just type next over here. Right, now let's open this in our browser. So I have this extension called live server in VS Code. So I'll just right click over here and click on open with live server. So here we can see we have the question, we have the 3 options, and we have the next button. Now let's go ahead and go to style.css, and let's start styling this quiz. Now let's target the quiz container class. So I'll just type quiz container. First of all, let's give it a background color. So here we can see that we have this gradient background color, and I have generated this from a website called cssgradient.io. So you can go to cssgradient.io and go to menu, and then click on backgrounds, and here you have to go to gradient hunt, and here you can find a lot of different gradients, and you can copy the CSS code from here. So I think this is the one that I have used, so I'll just copy this from here and paste it over here. So we have this gradient background. Now let's give it a maximum width of 480 pixels, and we'll set it to the center. So we'll just type margin, and for the top and bottom we'll type 32 pixels, and left and right auto. And let's set the font family to Open Sans serif. Now if you don't have this font, then you can go to fonts.google.com and download the font from there. Now let's add a border radius, and we'll add a border radius of 24 pixels, And let's also add a box shadow of 0, 4 pixels, 16 pixels, negative 2 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0 and 0.5. Right now let's target the question. So we'll type quiz container dot question. So we have this h2 with the class of question, and we'll text align it to the center, and we'll set the color of the text to light gray. And we also want to set a background color for this. So here we can see we have this gradient. So let's search for that over here, and I think this is the one. So I'll just copy this and paste it over here. So we have the background color. Now let's set a padding of 48 pixels top and bottom, and 24 pixels left and right. And we'll also add a border radius of 24 pixels top left and top right, and 0 for bottom left and bottom right. And we'll also give a margin bottom of 24 pixels. Right now let's target the options container. So we'll type quiz container options container. Right now for the options container, we'll set the display to flex and the flex direction to column, and let's set the width to 400 pixels, and we'll center it by typing margin 0 auto. Now let's target each of the options individually. So quiz container option, and we have to get the background color for this. So we have this gradient. So let's go to this website over here, and I think this is the one. Let's copy this and paste it over here, and let's add a padding of 16 pixels, and let's set the border to 0, and we will add a margin top of 20 pixels, and we'll set a border radius of 10 pixels, and we will add a border left of 8 pixels solid, and we will have the color as D62828, and let's set the font size to 20 pixels, and we'll also set the font weight to bold, and we'll set the cursor to pointer, so that when we hover over this we have a different mouse cursor. Let's also add the hover effect. So let's type quiz container option colon hover, and when we hover over this we want to have a different background color. So we'll set a background color of FFD37C, and we also want to change the scale. So we'll type transform scale of 1.05. So we have the hover effect. We'll also add a transition for smooth animation, all to 400 milliseconds. So the hover is working all right. Now the last thing to style is the next button. So let's type quiz container next btn, and we'll set a padding of 8 pixels top and bottom, and 48 pixels left and right, and margin top of 32 pixels, and margin bottom of 20 pixels. Right now we need to center it. So for that, let's go over here to the container division, and here we will add display of flex and flex direction of column, and here we can go ahead and type align self to center. Alright, let's add a background color of black, and we'll set the border to 0, and the color of the text to light gray, and we'll set the font size to 20 pixels and font weight to bold. Let's also set the cursor to pointer. Let's add a border radius of 10 pixels, and we'll also add a hover effect. So let's type quiz container next btn colon hover, and we'll just set a transform scale of 1.05, and we'll also add a transition. So everything is working all right. We have this margin top over here for the question. So let's go ahead and remove the margin top of 0. Alright, so now the design of the main area is completed. Let's start with the HTML for the start button and also the result. So after this quiz container division, let's go ahead and create one more division, and we'll give it a class called quiz start container. So this will contain the start button for the quiz, and we'll also add some info of the quiz after the start button. So let's go ahead and create a button, and we'll give it a class called quiz btn, and here we will type start quiz, and below that let's create a paragraph, and we'll give it a class of info, and in that we'll just type some information about the quiz. So here I'll just type there are 3 questions. You can add the number of questions over here according to your quiz, and then we'll type click on the correct option, and the result will be displayed at the end of the quiz. Alright, now let's write the HTML for the results. So here we'll create a division with the class of quiz result container. I have downloaded an image, so here if I go to img folder, here we can see I have downloaded an image of a crown, and I just downloaded this from a website called pixabay.com. Now let's add the image over here in our results. So here I'll just type img, and for the source I'll just type img/crown.png, and here we can see the crown, and after that we will just add an h2, and we'll just type congratulations, and after that we'll just have a paragraph, and we'll also give it a class of score text, and here we'll just type something like you have scored 3 out of 3, and after that we'll have a button, and for that we'll give it a class of quiz btn, and in that we'll type retake quiz, and we'll also have a close button. So inside the quiz result container I'll just create one more button, and we'll give it a class of quiz close btn, and here I will just type plus. We'll add some CSS, and we'll change this to a close button. Right now we need to make some changes to our main screen over here. Now what we need to do over here is that when the user clicks on this start quiz button, we want to display this main screen over here. Before that we want it to be hidden, and even the result page should not be shown at the beginning. So what we can do is that we can add a class called active to this main screen, and when we have the class of active for this screen, then the screen will be visible, or else we'll be hiding it. And I'll also go ahead and change the position of this to fixed, so that it will always be in the center vertically and horizontally, no matter what the size of the browser window is. So let's go to style.css, and we'll make some changes to this quiz container. So let's go ahead and add position, and we'll set it to fixed, and we'll set the left to 50% and top to 50%. We can see that now it starts from the center. I think we have some margin. We can remove the margin over here. So margin 0 auto. I think we can completely remove the margin because we have added this left and top positions. So let's remove this from here. Right now we can see that it starts from the center, but we want the complete screen to be in the center. So for that you have to transform and translate it to negative 50% for the x-axis and also negative 50% for the y-axis. Now we can see that it is perfectly in the center, and we have some problems with the width. So we have to change max width to width because we want to have a fixed width for our screen. So now we can see that we have the correct width of 480 pixels, and we can see that everything is working all right. Now when we don't have the active class for this quiz container, we don't want it to be displayed. So by default we will set the opacity to 0, and we'll also set the pointer events to none, so that we cannot click on any of those elements. Right now let's go ahead and add a class. So we'll type quiz container dot active, and make sure that you don't have any space between these two classes, because we want both these classes to be in the same division. Right, so when we have the active class, we will set the opacity to 1 and pointer events to auto. So let's go back to our HTML and add the active class to quiz container, and let's see whether it is being displayed. So here I'll just type active, and here we can see that our quiz container is being displayed on top of everything, and it is in the middle of the screen. If I make the screen bigger, we can see that it is still in the middle of the screen. Alright, now let's remove the active class from here, and now let's style the start button that we have over here. So let's go back to style.css, and let's create a new comment over here. So here I'll just type start quiz, and if you go back to the HTML, we can see that we have named our class quiz start container. So let's go ahead and target that over here. So we'll just type quiz start container, and we'll set a width of 400 pixels, and we'll set it to the center. So we'll just type margin 0 auto, and it is in the center. We'll just add top and bottom margin of 36 pixels. Let's bring this button to the center. So let's just type text align to center, and we can see that everything is in the center. We have this text also being text aligned to the center. Alright, now let's add the font family. So we'll just type font family of Open Sans and sans serif. Alright, now let's style this button. So if you go back to the HTML, we can see that for the button we have this class called quizbtn. So let's target that over here. So we'll just type quizbtn, and we'll give a background color of D62828, and let's remove the border. So just type border of 0, and we'll give it a padding of 16 pixels top and bottom, and 0 for left and right, and we'll set a width of 240 pixels, and we'll set the font size to 16 pixels, and let's also set the font weight to bold, and we'll change the color of the text, and we'll change it to white, and let's set the border radius to 10 pixels so that we have rounded corners, and we'll also add a border left of 10 pixels solid, and we'll set the color as black. Alright, now let's set the cursor to pointer so that when you hover over this, we should have a different cursor. So just type cursor pointer. So now we can see when we hover over this, we have a different cursor. And let's also set a margin of 8 pixels top and bottom, and 0 for left and right. And now let's set the hover effect. So let's go ahead and type quiz button colon hover, and when we hover over this, we want to increase the scale. So we'll just type transform scale of 1.15, and we'll also add a transition for smooth animation, all of 400 milliseconds. So let's hover over this, and we can see that we have this animation. Alright, now let's style this info. So for the info, we have a paragraph with a class of info. So let's target that. We'll type quiz start container and p.info, and for the info we will have a line height of 2. So now we can see we have a lot of space between two lines. Let's see whether font weight of bold will look good on this. I think font weight of normal would be better, so I'll just remove this. So we have this info and we have this start button over here. We're going to keep this start button and this info text simple. So this is all the CSS that we're going to add for this. Alright, now let's style the result. So here if you go to the index.html file, we can see we have this division with the class of quiz result container. So let's go ahead and target that. We'll just create a comment quiz result, and we'll type quiz result container. And first of all, let's set the size of the image so that we can style everything else correctly. So I'll just type quiz result container img, and we'll set the height of the image to 100 pixels. Right, now let's move on to style the quiz result container. So we'll set the font family to Open Sans, and let's text align to center. Right, now we'll position it to the center of the screen, and we also want it to be fixed. So let's type position fixed, and we'll set the left position to 50% and the top position to 50%. And right now it starts from the center of the screen, so we want to move it 50% to the left and 50% to the top. So for that we will type transform translate, and for the x value we will type negative 50%, and even for the y we will type negative 50%. So right now it is in the center of the screen. Now let's set a width of 400 pixels, and now let's set the background color to white, and let's also add a padding of 16 pixels, and let's also set the box shadow. So we'll set the box shadow to 0, 4 pixels, 16 pixels, and negative 2 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.2. And we also need to add a comma over here. Right, so now we can see that the box shadow is working alright. Right, now let's style this close button right here. So for that we'll type quiz result container, and we'll see what is the class for the close button. So the class is called quiz close button. So just type quiz close button. Now we need to set the position of this close button relative to the parent, which is the quiz result container. Now here we have this position set to fixed for the parent. So here in our quiz close button we can just type position to absolute, and we can set the right value to negative 16 pixels and the top value to negative 16 pixels. And let's also set the padding to 8 pixels and 18 pixels. And let's set the font size to 36 pixels and the font weight to bold. And let's set the border radius to 50% because we want it to be round. And we'll also remove the border, so we'll just type border of 0. Now this doesn't look like a close button, so we have to rotate it. So we'll just type transform rotate to 45 degrees. Now we can see that it has this close icon over here, and we'll set the background to black or dark gray, and we'll set the color of the text to white, and let's set the cursor to pointer, and we'll also add a hover effect for this. So we'll just type quiz result container quiz close button colon hover, and when we hover over this button we want to change the scale. So we'll just type transform scale to 1.1, and we'll also add a smooth transition by typing transition of all to 400 milliseconds. Right now when we hover over this we have this animation, and the button should not rotate. So for that here we have to type rotate 45 degrees. Right now let's hover over this, and we can see that it has the change of scale. Right now by default you don't need to show this result page. So here for the result page we will set the opacity to 0 and pointer events to none, so that we cannot click on any of these buttons, and we'll also add a transition all to 400 milliseconds. And here we will add an active class. So we'll just type quiz result container dot active, just like we did with the quiz container. And when we have the active class we will set the opacity to 1, and we will set the pointer events to auto. Right now let's go back to index.html and let's add the active class to the result. So here we'll type active, and now we can see that the result is being displayed, and when we remove the active class the result is not being displayed. Now here for the result I have just added this image for winning the quiz, but if the user didn't win the quiz then you may have to add a different image over here. You can go ahead and add one more image over here and give it a class, one for winning and one for losing. So you can display different images based on the result of the user. But as of now I'll just keep this as it is. Now one more thing to make this quiz look even better is by adding an overlay for the background, so that the quiz screen and the result and everything is displayed correctly. Right now we can see that the page is displayed clearly in the background. So we don't have a lot of difference between the quiz screen and the background of the page. So let's add a new division, and we'll give it a class of quiz overlay. And we don't need to add anything inside this. We'll style it in our style.css file. So let's go over here and let's add a comment. We'll just type overlay and we'll target that over here. So we'll just type quiz overlay, and we will set the position to fixed, and we will set the top to 0, left to 0, and we'll set the width to 100% and the height to 100 viewport height. And let's set a background color. So we'll set the background color of red to see whether it is being displayed, and we can see that it is being displayed. So what we'll do is we will add a z index to all these quiz elements. So here for the quiz container, we'll just add a z index of say 200, and let's add the active class to quiz container and see whether it is being displayed. Alright, so we can see that it is being displayed. So let's remove that, and we will add z index of 200 for the quiz result as well. So here for the quiz result container, we'll just type z index of 200, and we can see that it is being displayed over here. Right now for the overlay, we don't want to have the red color. We'll have a color with some opacity, so we'll just type RGBA, and let's try this color right here, 000 and 0.2. And now we can see that we have this overlay with this transparent background color. Let's go ahead and adjust the opacity over here. So let's change these values a little bit. So I think a value of 8 would look nice, or if you want, you can even go ahead and change these colors from here. So you can select a different color. For example, if I select this blue color from here, and I can change the opacity over here as well. So in this way you can go ahead and choose the color that you like, but I'll just go with the black color, and let's set the opacity to 0.8. We have 3 different screens for our quiz. The first one is the start button. So let me just remove the active class from here in the result. And we also have this overlay. So let's remove the opacity from overlay. Here I'll just type opacity 0. Right, so we have the start button over here, and when we click on the start button, we want to display the main quiz screen over here, which is a division with the class of quiz container. So we will add this active class to this quiz container. So this is how the quiz container will look. And after the quiz is done, we'll remove this quiz container from our screen, and then we'll display the quiz result container. So here we will add the active class. So this is how the quiz will work. So we'll do all of this using JavaScript. So let's get started. Now JavaScript can be a little bit intimidating for beginners. So I'll try to explain every single line of code, and I hope that you'll be able to understand everything. So in this first video, we will connect everything, and we'll make these buttons work. So when we click on the start quiz button, we should display this quiz container, and when the quiz is finished, we should display this result container. And when we click on the close button, everything should be hidden. And when we click on the retake quiz button, then the quiz should start once again. Now in this video, we're not going to add the questions dynamically. We'll just work with this question that we have over here. Later I'll show you how to add our own questions and display them dynamically on the screen. So let's start by adding our main.js file to our HTML file. So we have already linked our script file. So here we can see we have the script tag, and we have the source main.js file. So let's go to our main.js file, and let's start writing our JavaScript. Now before getting started with the JavaScript, we can see that our start button doesn't have the hover effect. So as of now, we cannot interact with this start button. So the reason for that is we have this quiz overlay over here inside our HTML, and it is on top of this start button. So let's go over here to our CSS, and in the quiz overlay, we have already set the opacity to 0. We'll also have to set the pointer events to none, so that we can interact with the other elements. So now we can see that when we hover over this, we have the interaction. Now we'll also add an active class to the quiz overlay. So here we will type quiz overlay dot active, just like we did with the quiz result and the quiz container. So here we will set the opacity to 1 and pointer events to auto, and we'll also set a transition of all to 400 milliseconds. Alright, now let's go back to our JavaScript, and we need to reference all the elements from our HTML. So first of all, let's reference this start button from here. So in our HTML, we can see that for the start button, we have this button with the class of quiz button. Now we have a quiz button over here, and we also have a quiz button for the retake quiz. So we'll also create one more class for this. So we'll type start quiz btn, and we'll reference this class from here. So let's go to our main.js file, and we'll create a constant, and we'll type start quiz btn, and we'll set it to document dot query selector, and here we'll type dot start quiz btn. Now we have a reference for the start quiz button. Now when we click on the start quiz button, we want to display the quiz container. So let's have a reference for that as well. So if you go to our HTML, we can see that for the quiz container, we have a division with the class of quiz container. So let's reference that over here. We'll type const quiz container equals document dot query selector and dot quiz container. Now when we click on this start button, we want to display the quiz container. So let's add an event listener for the start quiz button. So we'll add a comment. We will type start button, and here we'll type start quiz button dot add event listener. So using event listeners, we can listen to different events on our screen and perform different actions depending on the event. So for our event, we will type click. So we want to execute something when we click on the start quiz button, and the next argument we want over here is a function. So I'll just create an arrow function, which is a new way of creating functions. So I'll just open and close parentheses because we don't have any arguments for a function. So I'll just keep this empty, and here I will just type equals greater than, and in curly brackets let's add our functionality. So we want to add the active class to the quiz container. So let's type quiz container dot class list dot add, and here we'll type active. So now when we click on the start quiz button, we will add the active class to the quiz container. So let's click on the start quiz button, and let's see whether it happens. And we can see that the quiz container is being displayed. Now it would look better if we have some animation when we display the quiz container. So let's go back to our style.css, and let's go to the quiz container, and here for the top we will type negative 100%, and when we add the active class, we will set the top to 50%, and we'll also add a transition for smooth animation, all to 400 milliseconds. Alright, so let's test it once more. We'll refresh our page. Let's click on the start quiz button, and our quiz is displayed with the animation. Alright, now the next thing we'll do is when we click on the next button, we will display the result. Now we don't always want to have the next button pointing to the result, but since now we don't have all the questions for our quiz, I'll just connect this next button to our result. So let's reference these elements. We have the next button and the quiz result container. So if you go to our HTML, we can see we have this button with the class of next btn, and for the result we have this division with the class of quiz result container. So let's add both of these to our JavaScript. So let's type const next btn equals document dot query selector dot next btn, and for the quiz result container we'll just type const quiz result container equals document dot query selector quiz result container. Right, now let's write the functionality for the next button. So we'll just add a comment. We'll type next button, and here we'll type next btn dot add event listener click, and we'll create a function, and here we will type quiz result container dot class list dot add, and we will add the active class over here. So let's test it out. Let's click on the start quiz button, and we have this quiz, and when we click on the next button we have the result. Now when we have the result, we want to hide this quiz screen from here. So here we'll also type quiz container class list remove active. So now when we start quiz and when we click on the next button, the quiz screen goes away and we have the result. Now we also need to add the overlay for our quiz. So here in our HTML we can see that we have this division with the class of quiz overlay. So let's reference that over here. Here we'll type const quiz overlay document dot query selector quiz overlay, and when we start the quiz we also want to display the quiz overlay. So we'll just type quiz overlay dot class list dot add, and we'll type active. So we are adding all these active classes which we had added in our style.css. So here we can see for the quiz overlay we have this active class. So for the active class we have the opacity of 1 and pointer events to auto. So now let's click on the start button, and now we have the overlay and also the quiz screen, and when we click on the next button the quiz screen goes away and we have the result. Now when we click on the retake quiz button, we want this result to go away and we want the quiz screen to be displayed once more. So let's reference the retake quiz button, and we also have this close button over here. So let's reference both of these buttons. So if you go to our index.html, we have this button with the class of quiz close button, and then we have this retake quiz button. We'll also add one more class. We'll just type retake quiz btn. So let's reference them in our JavaScript, quiz close button and retake quiz button. So here we'll type const quiz close btn document dot query selector quiz close btn, and then we have retake quiz btn equals document dot query selector dot retake quiz btn. Now when we click on the close button we want to remove the active class from all the elements. So let's type close button quiz close button dot add event listener, click, and in the function we will type quiz result container class list dot remove active, and we also want to remove the active class from quiz container dot class list dot remove active, and we also want to remove the active class from the overlay. So we'll just type quiz overlay dot class list dot remove active, and let's also write the code for the retake quiz button. So we'll just type retake button, and here we'll type retake quiz button dot add event listener, click, and we'll create a function. And when we click on the retake quiz button we want to display the quiz screen and we want to hide the result. So we'll type quiz result container dot class list dot remove active, and we'll type quiz container dot class list dot add active. Right, now let's see whether everything is working all right. Let's refresh our page and let's click on the start quiz button, and we have the quiz displayed over here. Let's click on the next button and we have the result displayed over here. Let's click on the retake quiz button and the result goes away and we have this quiz. And if we click on the close button, everything is closed and we have the start quiz button over here. Now first of all I'll just change these buttons into radio buttons so that it'll be easier for us to track the answers of the user. So let's go ahead and go to index.html, and instead of these buttons we will add radio buttons. So I'll just delete all of these, and here we will add radio buttons. We'll just type input, and for the type we will type radio, and then we'll have an ID. So for the ID we'll just type option 1, and later we're gonna remove everything from here and dynamically create all of these using JavaScript, but just for styling this we will add this right now. So for the ID we'll type option 1, and let's create a label and the label will be for this option 1. So we have to add this ID over here. So we'll just type option 1. And for the label, we'll also give a class, and we'll give it a class of option, because we have already styled the option class over here in our CSS. So here we can see in our style.css we have some styles for the option, so we can reuse these styles in our label. So in our label, we'll just type the first option, and here we can see we have this label and we have this radio button. Now we don't want to display this radio button, so we'll just hide it using CSS. Even if you click on this label, this radio button will be selected, because we have added this for, and we have set the ID of this input. So whenever we click on this label, this input will be selected. So I'll just copy this and paste it 2 more times. And for the next one, we will have ID of option 2, and then we have ID of option 3, and the type will be radio. And then for these labels, we will have option 2 and option 3. And here the next option we had was Google Chrome, and then we had Python over here. So let's display that. And here we can see all the labels are being displayed. We can click on any of these and the input of that label will be selected. Now we have a problem over here. We can select multiple radio buttons at once. Now we don't want that. So for that, we can add another attribute over here in the input called name. So for the name, we'll just type option. Now you have to add the same name to all the inputs. So we'll just add it over here and over here. Now let's click on start quiz, and if we click on Java, we have this selected, and when we click on Google Chrome, the Java is deselected and we have Google Chrome selected. So in this way, we can select just one of these options. Now let's go to our style.css and we'll just hide these inputs. So here we will add a new selector, and we'll just type quiz container and options container, and we'll select all the inputs with the type of radio, and we'll just type display none. And now we can see that the radio button is not being displayed, but the label is being displayed. So we can see that it just looks like a button. Alright, now let's move on to our JavaScript, and I'll create the questions over here itself. So I'll just add a comment over here, and I'll just type questions. Now for the questions, we'll be creating an array of objects. So I'll just show you how to create that. We'll just create a constant, and we'll just name it questions, and we'll just create an array. So this is how you create an array in JavaScript. Now an array is basically a data structure that can store different things. So we can add things like question 1, question 2, and in this way we can store different items in an array. But we're going to store objects, so I'll just delete this. And to create an object, you have to type curly brackets, and in that you have to have key value pairs. Now for the first data, we'll type question ID, and then you have to type colon. For the first question ID, we will type 0, and then we'll type question. This is the actual question. So for the first question, we'll type which of the following is a browser. So this is our question. Now let's add a comma, and we will add the options. Now for the options, we'll create an array. So this will be an array inside another array. So we'll just type options colon, and we'll have square brackets, and in that we'll create an object, and we'll just type option, and the first option is Java. In the same way, I'll just add a comma, and I'll just duplicate this 2 more times. The second option is Google Chrome, and the third option is Python. Now you can add more options if you want over here, but I'll just stick with 3 options. And that's it with the options. Now we'll just add a comma over here, and the next value that we want to have is the correct answer. So we'll just type correct answer, and the correct answer is Google Chrome. So just type that over here. Alright, and that's basically our first question. So we have the question ID. We won't be using this question ID in our code, but it is always a good idea to add IDs to whatever fields you have in your data. So we have the question ID, we have the question, and we have the options, and then we have the correct answer from the options. So this is basically how we're going to add questions for our quiz. So you can go ahead and create these objects and add as many questions as you want in your quiz. So I'll just quickly go ahead and add 2 more questions over here. So I'll just add a comma over here, and I'll just basically copy this and paste it over here, and I'll just fast forward this process. Now here for this question we will have just 2 options, true and false. So I'll just type true and false over here, and I'll just remove the third one, and the correct answer is true. Right, so I have added 3 questions over here. You can add as many questions as you want in the same format. Now let me show you how to access these questions in our JavaScript code. So I'll just maximize this, and I'll just open the inspector, and let's go to console. Now here we can execute JavaScript code. So if you go back to our source code, here we can see we have this constant questions. So in that we have all the questions. So let's just type questions over here and press enter. And here we can see as a result we have 3 different items. So let's expand this. Here we have the 0th element, and it is this question number 1 with the ID of 0. We have the question and options and all of that. Then we have the first element, and we have all the details, and then we have the second element. So here we can see we have 3 questions, and if we go inside that, we can see we have the correct answer, we have the options. So we have 3 options over here. If you go inside the options, we can see all the options over here. So we have the option Java, Chrome and Python, and then we have the question and question ID. So now let me show you how to access the questions inside that. So now let's go ahead and type questions, and let's access the first element. So I'll just type 0 over here. So now we have just one element displayed over here. So this is the question ID 0. We have the question over here. We have the options, correct answer and the question ID. So now let's access the first question from here. So it is called question. So I'll just type questions, and we'll access the first element, which is the 0th element, and then here we will type question and press enter. And here we can see we have the first question being displayed over here. In the same way we can access the options. Now let's access the second option from the last question over here. So this is the last question. So we'll just type questions, and here we'll type 2, and then we have options, and we want to access the second option from that. So the first one is 0 and the second one is 1. So I'll just select 1, and then we will type option, because it is inside the second option and it is called option. So let's type option and press enter, and we can see that the second option, which is false, is being displayed over here. So this is basically how you access these questions from our question array. Now we can use this knowledge to display our questions and options to our quiz. So let's close the console, and let's go back to our code. Now since we are working with the main screen over here, I'll just go over here to index.html, and I'll just add the active class over here by default. So let's go back to our main.js file, and let's first of all display the question over here. So let's scroll down, and here we'll create a function. So I'll just type display questions, and the function will be named display questions, and I'll just type equals, and as the argument we want to pass the question number. So I'll just type q number over here, and we'll just create an arrow function, and let's call the function over here. So I'll just type display questions, and we'll just type 0 as of now. So we have created this function, and we are calling the function over here with this argument 0. So it will fetch the first question over here, and I just realized that our text is left aligned. So I'll just fix that. Alright, let's go back to our JavaScript, and first of all let's display the question, and later we'll display the options. So let's add a reference for this question. So let's go back to our index.html, and here we can see we have this h2 with the class of question, and this is where we have the question. So I'll just remove this question from here, and I'll just type test, and let's go back to our main.js file, and let's reference this variable over here. So here I will just type const, and we'll type question, and it'll be equal to document dot query selector, and we'll just type question over here because we have the question class for this h2. So let's scroll down, and here we will type question dot inner text, and we can type anything over here. So if I just type testing 1 2 3, and if I just save this, we can see that testing 1 2 3 is being displayed over here. Now we already know how to access the questions from our array, so let's go ahead and use that knowledge over here. So we'll just type questions, which is the array that we have over here, and we want to access the question number which is provided over here as an argument. So here we will type square brackets q number, and from that we need to access the question. So I'll just type question. Now if I save this, we can see that the first question is being displayed over here. Now if you want to display the second question, I'll just change this question number to 1, and we can see the second question is being displayed. Now to display the third question, we'll just type 2 over here, and we can see that the third question is being displayed over here. Now that's basically how you access the questions from your question array and display them in your HTML. Now if you go back to the HTML, we can see that we have already typed all the inputs and the labels over here. So now we'll just delete everything from here, and we will display everything using JavaScript. But just for reference, I'll just copy one of these and paste it over here so that we can see how it is structured. So I'll just add this inside a comment. Alright, so now let's go ahead and delete all of these. And we have this options container division, and in that we need to display all the options. So let's go back to our main.js file, and let's display the options over here. We will add the code inside the display questions function itself. Now in the previous video we have seen how to access the different options inside the questions. So we'll just use that knowledge over here to display the options. If you haven't watched the previous videos, you can go ahead and watch that. I will leave the link of the playlist in the description of this video. So let's go ahead and loop through all the options that we have in the question number, which is provided over here. So for that we will just type questions, and here we will type q number, and then we'll type dot options. So if we scroll up, we can see that we have this questions array, and in that we have the options array, and in the options array we have 3 options over here. So we can loop through each of these options over here. So for that we'll use a for each loop. So we'll type for each. Now a for each loop is a way to access each of the elements one by one inside an array. So here we have to give a variable name for each of the individual elements. So for the single option, I'll just type O, and I'll just create an arrow function. Now let's just test and see whether the options are being displayed. So let's go back over here to index.html, and here we have this division with the class of options container. Let's reference that. So here we'll just type const options container equals document dot query selector options container. Now let's simply display all the options inside the options container. So I'll just type options container dot inner text equals o dot option. Now we can see that the third option is displayed over here. So here we can see this is the third option. Let's display all the options. So for that we have to type plus equals. Now we can see all the options are being displayed. Now let's add a different question number and see whether the options of that question is being displayed over here. So let's type 1 over here, and now we can see all the options of the second question are being displayed over here. So we know that the for each loop is working alright. Now let's delete this line of code, and let's create everything according to this structure that we have over here. So the first thing we need to do is create an input. So in JavaScript you can use a function called create element to create any element you want. So let's create an input element and we'll call it option radio button. So here we'll type document dot create element, and in parentheses you have to name the element. So the element is called input. So we have our input element created. Now the next thing we need to do is we have to change the type of the element to radio. So here we'll type option radio button dot type equals radio. So now we have created an input and we have changed the type to radio. Now the next thing I have to do is add an ID attribute and add an ID over here. Now for the first option we have an ID of option 1, and for the second one we have option 2, and then for the third one we have option 3. Now to make it easier for us, we can use something called index inside this for each loop. So here we have already typed a variable name called O to access the options. We'll add one more argument over here. So I'll just add a parenthesis, and here I'll just type comma, and let's just call it O index. So this will be the index of the options. So for the first option we will have an index of 0. For the second one we will have an index of 1, and so on. So in this way we can add unique IDs to each of the options. So let's create a variable for the ID. We'll just type let option ID equals, and here we have option and then we have a number over here. So let's type option and we'll just type plus, and we can add this number over here, O index. Now for the first option we will have an option ID of option 0. Alright, now we have the input, we have the type set to radio, and we also have an ID. So let's set the ID over here. So we'll just type option radio button dot ID equals option ID. Now the next thing we need to do is create the name attribute, and we have to set it to option. So let's type option radio button dot name equals option. Right, now let's create the label. So we'll create a constant and we'll just type option label, and we'll type document dot create element, and the element is label. And for the label element we want the for to be set to the ID of the option. So let's type option label. Now to add the for attribute you have to type HTML for, and we'll set it to the same ID that we have over here. So we will just type option ID, and then we need to add a class called option. So let's type option label dot class list dot add option, and lastly we need to add the option over here inside the label. So let's type option label dot inner text, and we'll set it equal to O dot option. Alright, now let's add the radio button and the label to our options container. So for that you have to type options container, which we have already referenced over here, this one right here. So here we have to type options container, and to add something to the options container we have to type append child, and in that we will just add the option radio button, and we also have to add the label. So we'll just type options container dot append child option label. Right, now let's save it and see whether it works, and we can see that all the options are being displayed over here. Let's load a different question. We'll just type display questions 0, and we can see that the options of that question is being displayed over here. Let's display the last question, and we can see that the two options that we have for this question is being displayed over here. Alright, now let's add the functionality to display the next question. So for that we have to change the question numbers. So we have to get rid of these numbers over here, and we have to add a variable instead of this. So we'll just create a variable called question number. So let's create a variable called question number. So we'll just type let question number equals 0. So we'll start from 0, and as we change the question number, different questions will be displayed over here using this display questions function. Now let's reference this next button, and we will add an event listener to that. So here we can see we have the next button, and we already have some code for that. This code is to display the result and to hide the quiz container. So we want to execute these lines of code when all the questions are finished. So let's also add a new variable over here, and let's call it total questions, and we'll set it equal to the number of questions. So here we can see in this questions array we have these objects. Now you can access the length property of an array in JavaScript. So let's go ahead and type questions dot length. So now since we have three elements over here, the first question, second and the third question, the total questions will have the value of 3. Right, so here we will type question number plus plus. Now this will increment the question number variable by 1. So now since the value is 0, when this code is being executed, it will change to 1. So in this way we'll keep on incrementing the value of question number when we click on the next button. And then we have to have an if condition to check whether all the questions have finished. So for that we will type if question number is less than total questions. If that is the case, then we have to display questions, and we'll just type question number. Or if that's not the case, that is if all the questions have finished, then we have to execute these two lines of code. So we are calling this display questions function that we wrote over here. So let's test it out and see whether it works. Let's click on the next button, and we can see that the next question is being displayed over here, but the options of the previous question are also being displayed over here. So let's go back over here to display questions, and before this for each loop we have to remove everything inside options container. So we'll just type options container dot inner HTML equals. So this will reset everything. Now let's try it once more. Let's click on the next button, and we have the next question and the options. Let's click on the next button once more, and we have the next question and the options. And let's click on the next button once more, and we have the results screen over here. I would like to make a little change in this text over here. So when we are on the last question, this text should change to submit. Let's go to our main.js file, and let's go to the code which is written for the next button. So if you scroll down, we can see that we have this next button event listener over here. So here we have the question number incremented over here, and in this way we are displaying the next question. And here we will add one more if condition. So here we can see that it says if question number is less than total questions. Now here we will add one more if condition, and we will type if question number is equal to the total questions minus 1. Now this if statement will be true if we are on the last question in our quiz. So here we need to access this next button. So let's type next btn dot inner text equals, and we will change the text to finish. Alright, so now when we are on the last question, this text will change to finish. So let's test it out. This is the first question. Let's click on the next one. This is the second question, and let's click on the next button. And this is the last question, and we have the text finish displayed over here. And when we click on finish, our quiz ends, and we have this result displayed over here. Alright, now the next thing we'll do is we will remove the active class that we already have in our HTML. So if I refresh this page, we can see that our quiz screen is active by default. So let's go over here to index.html, and we had added this active class just for testing. So let's remove that, and here we have the start quiz button, and when we click on the start quiz button, we have this quiz screen displayed over here, and we can click on the next button and finish it, and we have this result over here. And I think we already have the code for the retake and the close buttons. So let's click on the retake button, and the quiz screen is displayed once more. But we can see that the last question is being displayed over here, and we also have the close button. So we have written the code for the close button as well. So let's click on the close button, and now if we click on start quiz, we have the quiz screen displayed once more, but we still have the last question over here. We'll fix that. So let's go back to our main.js file, and here we can see that we have this code for the start quiz button. Now when we start the quiz, the question number should be set to 0, and all the other variables should be reset. So let's create a new function over here. We'll just name this function init for initialization. So here we have created this arrow function called init, and in that we will reset all the values. So we will set the question number to 0. We'll also change the text of the next button back to next. So next button dot inner text equals next, because we had changed it to finish when we are on the last question. Alright, so now we have this init function where we are resetting the values. So here in the start quiz button, let's go ahead and call the function. So I'll just type init over here, and let's scroll down and add the init to the retake quiz button as well. So here I will just type init. Now let's click on the start quiz button, and we can see that the first question is being displayed over here. Let's click on the next button. We have the next question, and we have the last question and the finish button over here. Let's click on retake quiz, and here we don't have the first question being displayed. So I think we also need to call the display questions function over here. So I'll just type question number, and we have to call the display questions function in our start quiz button as well. So let's add it over here. Right, now let's test it once more. Here we have the first question, next, next, finish, retake, and it is working all right. Close and start quiz, and everything is working all right. Right, now the next thing to do is whenever we click on any of these radio buttons, we need to store the value of this radio button somewhere so that we can check whether the answer is correct or not. But before that, let's go ahead and give some styling to the checked button. So if I click on this Java option, it is checked, but we don't have any particular styles over here for that. So let's go to style.css and let's add some styling for the checked state. So let's type quiz container options container input of type radio colon checked. And when we have this radio button checked, we want to add some styling to the label. So let's type plus label, because the label is after the radio button. So if you go over here to inspect, here we can see we have this input, and after that we have the label, then we have the input, then we have the label. So since we have the label after the input, we can add the plus selector. So for the label, we will just I think we can just give a red background color. I think it will look nice. Let's add it over here, and we'll also need to change the color to white. I think that looks fine. So let's add that style over here to our CSS. So we will type background color of this red color that we have over here, and color of the text to white. Alright, so let's go back and see whether it works. So let's click on Google Chrome, and now we can see that we have this style for the Google Chrome option. Let's click on Python, and now we can see which of these options is selected by the user. Right, now whenever the user selects any of these options, we want to store it somewhere as a variable, and then later we'll be able to check whether the answer is correct or not. Now for that, we'll go ahead and add an event listener to the radio buttons. So we'll add an event listener for the change event. So for that, let's go over here to main.js, and this is where we are creating the radio buttons. So we have this display questions function, and this is the code where the radio button is being created. So we'll type option radio button, dot add event listener, and here we will tap change. So whenever the state of the radio button changes, this event will be fired. So here we'll just name a function. So just tap store answer, and we'll create this function. So let's type store answer const store answer, and when we call this function from the event listener, we also get a value. So let's call that value O over here. You can call this anything you want. Now this variable will tell us which of the radio buttons was clicked. So let's go ahead and create a new variable for storing the answer. So here we'll just type let user answer equals blank, and here we will go ahead and we will type if O. So we are checking whether any of the radio buttons are pressed. So if the radio button is pressed, then we'll type user answer, and we'll store the value of the radio button to the user answer. So we'll just type O, and to access that element you have to type target. So this will access the radio button. Now we don't want to store the value of the radio button, we want to store the value which is inside the label. So let's type next element sibling. So this will get us the next element, which is the label, and then we need to type inner text. Now this will get the value of the label, and we are storing it inside the user answer variable. And if you don't have any value for that, then we'll just set the user answer to blank. Right now let's just print out the answer and see whether it is being stored. So here I'll just type console.log, and I'll just type user answer, and here I will just type user answer. So now we'll be able to see whether the answer is being stored. So let's go back to our quiz, and here I'll just go to console, and let's click on start quiz, and let's click on one of these options. Let's click on Java, and the page is not being refreshed, so that's why the answer is not being updated. So let's go back and cut this from here, and we will add it right here. So whenever we are storing the answer, we are also displaying it on our console. So let's do it once more. Let's click on start quiz, and let's click on Java, and we can see that it says user answer Java. Let's click on Google Chrome. It says user answer Google Chrome. So we can see that the answer is being stored correctly. Let's click on next, and let's click on the first option over here, and we can see that the answer is being stored correctly. So now it's just a matter of checking whether the answer is correct or not whenever the user clicks on the next button. Alright, so now let's create a function for checking whether the answer is correct or not. And if the answer is correct, then we will increment the score of the user. So let's also create a variable for the score. So here we'll just type let user score equals 0, and in the init we will go ahead and set the user score to 0 by default. So whenever the quiz starts, the user score will be 0. Right, now let's create this function for checking the answer. So let's type check answer. So let's type const check answer, and we'll type if user answer is equal to, and we will access the correct answer from the questions array over here. So we have to go to questions, and then you have to go to question number, and then in that we have to go to the correct answer. So let's type questions. For the question number we will type question number, because we already have a variable for that, and this variable stores the current question number, and then in that we have the correct answer. So here we are just checking whether the correct answer is equal to the user answer. Now if that's the case, then we have to increment the score of the user. So we'll just type user score plus plus. So this will increment the user score by 1. If you want to increment it by any other number, you can just type user score plus equals any number over here like 5 or 10 or anything you want. For now I'll just type user score plus plus. Now the next thing you need to do is call this function check answer when we are clicking on the next button. So let's see where is the code for the next button. So here we have the code for the next button. So here I will just type check answer. Now when the user clicks on the next button, the answer is checked and the user score is updated. So let's also type console.log user score. Alright, so now let's test it out. Let's click on start quiz and we have this quiz. Let's click on the correct answer, which is Google Chrome, and we can see that the user score is 1. And let's click on the wrong option for this question. I'll just select this one right here and click on next, and we can see that the user score is still 1. Now let's click on the correct answer for this question. We just press true and we'll just click on finish, and now we can see that we have the user score of 2. So everything is working alright. Now the last thing we need to do is just add the score right here. So let's go back and let's create a function. So here I will just type show the result, and we'll create a function and we'll just name it show result, and we'll calculate the percentage of the result. So I'll just type let percentage equals. Now to calculate the percentage, you have to type user score divided by the total questions times 100. So it will give you the percentage. Now if the percentage of the user is greater than or equal to 60, then we will add some text, and if the percentage is less than 60, then we'll have some other text over here. Now these are for the headings. So this right here, we just type congratulations when the user score is more than 60%, and if it is less than 60%, we just type you can do better or something like that. So let's access this element. So if you go to index.html, we can see in the quiz result container we have this h2. So I'll just give it a class and we'll just type result heading, and then for the result text we already have this class called score text. So let's reference both of these in our JavaScript. So let's go back to main.js, and here we will type const result heading equals document.querySelector result heading, and then we have score text equals document.querySelector score text. Alright, let's go ahead and access them over here. Here we will type result heading dot inner text equals congratulations, and if it is less than 60%, we'll just type result heading dot inner text equals you can do better, and score text dot inner text, and we'll set it equal to you have scored, and we can add the variable over here by concatenation, or you can even just use template strings. So you can just use this backtick, and then you can type the sentence over here, you have scored. Now to add a variable, you can just type $sign and curly brackets, and for the variable we'll type user score, and then we'll type out of, and then we have another variable total questions, and then we have a full stop. Now the only thing you need to do is call this function when the quiz ends. So let's go to the code for the next button, and here we can see that in this else block we have the code for when the quiz ends. So here we can see quiz result container is being shown over here. Now here we'll just type show result. Alright, now everything should work alright. So let's test it once more. We'll click on start quiz, and let's click on the correct answer, and let's click on the correct answer over here, and we'll just click on the wrong answer over here and click on finish. And we have some problem, cannot set property inner text of null. It is at 170. Let's go ahead and see what's the problem. So we have some problem with the result heading. Let's scroll up over here, and let's go back to our index.html, and I think we haven't saved it, so that's the problem. Let's test it once more. Right now we can see that the correct score is being displayed over here. We have scored 2 out of 3, and congratulations is being displayed over here. Let's retake the quiz and let's provide all the wrong answers. So just type Java combined processing unit and false. So now it says you can do better, and we have the correct score over here. Let's try answering all the questions correctly. And we can see we have 3 out of 3. So that's basically how you display the result of your quiz. We have the start button over here, so you can add this start button anywhere on your post. Now when you click on the start button, we have the main quiz screen over here, and then we can see that we have this question, and we have these options over here, and you can select one of these options from here. So let's select the correct one over here, and let's click on next, and then we have the next question. I'll just select the correct answer over here as well, and this is the last question. We have 3 questions in our quiz, so let's click on the wrong answer, and let's click on finish. And here we can see we have the result of our quiz. So we have this message over here, congratulations, and we have scored 2 out of 3. And then we also have this retake quiz and close buttons. So let's click on retake, and this time let's go ahead and submit all the wrong answers. So I'll just click on Java, and this one right here, and this wrong answer right here, and then we'll just click on finish. And here we can see we have this message called you can do better. Earlier it was congratulations, but now it says you can do better because we have the score of 0. So whenever you have a score of less than 60%, then you will have this message right here, and then we can close the quiz right here. So that's basically how the quiz works. So let's get started. Now this is the source code of the quiz. So we have created everything from scratch in this tutorial series. So this is all the source code. I have also uploaded this source code on GitHub, so I will leave the link in the description of this video. So this is the HTML, and we have some styling over here, and then we also have the JavaScript for the quiz functionality. Now let me show you how to add and remove quiz questions and options. So here I have created this array inside this main.js file. So once you download the source code, you will get these 3 files over here. So here we have this questions array, and in that we have these objects. So this is the first object, and in each of the objects we have this pattern where we have the question ID, then we have the question, and then we have an array called options, and in that we have options. So we have option, and the value is Java, and then we have another option. So in this way you can add multiple options over here. You can even add the number of options that you want. So if we delete one of these from here, it will just show you 2 options in your quiz, so it won't show any errors if you have less than 3 options. So you can decide on the number of options you want to have. And then lastly we have the correct answer over here, so you can just copy the right answer from here and paste it over here. So this is how the question is structured. So if you want to add a new question, you can just go ahead and after this comma you can go ahead and copy this same thing from here and paste it over here and add your own details, the question, the options, and the correct answer. If you want to delete any of these questions, you can just go ahead and select the object you want and delete that, and it will work all right. So that's basically how you add and remove questions and options in this quiz. And then here we have all the code for the functionality. Let me show you some of the important things over here. So if we scroll down, we can see we have this option to display the result. So here you can modify the message that will be displayed on the result, and here is the code for calculating the percentage. And then here we have this if condition where the percentage is checked, and if it is greater than or equal to 60%, then we have this message right here. So you can go ahead and change this value to whatever you want. And also you can go ahead and change these messages over here. So these two messages are for the heading, and then lastly here we have the message that is displayed for the score. So it says you have scored, and this is the user score variable. Out of this is the total questions. So you can modify these messages and customize this to your needs. And then here you have the style.css file where you can go ahead and style it to your needs. So you can change the colors and fonts and all of those things over here. I will leave all that up to you, but right now we have a complete quiz ready for you. So let me show you how to add this to your Blogger post. So here I'm in the dashboard of my Blogger website. So let's go ahead and create a new post. So I'll just click on new post, and let's add the code. First of all, let's add this title over here. So just type quiz, and here you have to make sure that you have to go to the HTML view. By default it will be in the compose view, so this is how it will look if you are in the compose view. So if you are here, then you can go to this option and click on HTML view. So this is where you can add your HTML code. So once you go to the HTML view, just go to the source code and copy everything inside the body. So I'll just copy everything from here and till the end of this division right here called quiz overlay. You don't have to copy this line of code for the script. So just copy this code inside the body and paste it over here. So we have copied the HTML for the quiz over here. And you can also go ahead and change this text over here for the start button, for the quiz info, and all of those things over here. Now once you copied the HTML, you have to copy the JavaScript as well. So here you have to go ahead and type script and then end the tag over here. Now inside the script tag you have to add the JavaScript code. So let's go to our source code and let's go to main.js, and we'll copy everything from this file right here. So once you add your own questions over here, you can go ahead and copy everything from here and paste it inside the script tag. Right now we have copied the HTML and the JavaScript. Now we have to add the link of the image right here. So here we can see that in our HTML we have added this image for the crown. So if you have added any image in your design, then you have to upload it separately in your Blogger. So I'll just go over here and I'll just make some space, and I'll go over here to insert image and click on upload from computer, and then click on choose files. So this is our quiz project. Let's go to images, and I'll just select this image and click on open, and then I'll just select this and click on select, and click on original size and click on OK. Now we have to just copy the link of the image from here. So I'll just copy this from here and then paste it over here inside the src, and then we can just delete this image right here. Alright, so we have added the HTML, the JavaScript, and also the image. So let's click on publish. Now the next thing you have to do is add the CSS. So let's click on theme and then click on this arrow and click on edit HTML, and then scroll down and find all the CSS of the theme code. So these are all the CSS. Now this is where the CSS ends. It is just before the bee skin ends right here. So here I'll just add a comment. So I have added this comment right here. So let's copy the CSS from our source code. So I'll just copy everything from here and paste it over here. Now the next thing you have to do is you have to copy the link of the font. So if you scroll up over here, we can see that we have used this font called Open Sans. So let's copy the link of the font from Google Fonts. So here I will just search for Open Sans and just select this, and I'll just select the regular and the bold from here, and then here we can see a link. So just copy this link from here and then go over here and go to the start of the theme code, and here inside the head tag you have to copy the link of the font. So here we can see this is the head tag. So here inside this I'll just paste the link of the font and just end it over here like this. And whenever you have an ampersand in your link, you have to replace that with ampersand amp semicolon. Right, so now let's click on save, and everything is updated successfully. We don't have any errors. So let's go back and let's go to posts and let's click on view on this quiz. And here we can see we have the start button right here, and we have the info of the quiz. Let's open the quiz and see whether it works. Let's click on start quiz, and we have the quiz screen over here. We have the options, the questions, and all of those. Now the text color of the options is not completely black, so we have to change that. So right click over here and click on inspect. So this is for the label. So for the label we have to set the color of the text to black. So we'll just keep that in mind. Right, so now let's go ahead and select an option from here and then click on next. Let's select an option from here and click on next, and let's select an option from here and click on finish. And we can see that our result is being displayed over here, and you can also change the color of this text over here, but I'll just keep it as it is. And we have some problems with this close button. It is not exactly round. So let's right click over here and click on inspect, and let's see what we can do. I think there are some problems with the padding, so let's increase this, or maybe 18 or 16 pixels. So we have to change the padding of the close button to 16-18 pixels, and then we have to change the color of the text for the options. So let's go back and let's go to theme and then click on edit HTML. So let's go to the CSS. So here's the close button. Let's go ahead and change this to 16-18, and then let's go ahead and find the label. I think this is the label, so let's go ahead and change the color to black. Let's save it and let's refresh our page, and let's click on start quiz, and we have the correct color for our options. Let's select an option and click on next. Let's select another option, click on next, and then let's click on an option, click on finish, and we can see that the result is being displayed over here, and even the close button is styled correctly. So let's retake. So here we have the result. Everything is working all right. So that's basically how you add a quiz to your Blogger website. I will leave the link of the source code in the description of this video. So if you have any doubts, you can ask them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.